this episode of the Beer Leaguer Podcast, we're talking about those teammates that stink. Literally, like their gear actually smells foul. Mason joins me to talk about all the hows and whys of cleaning your gear so you can stop smelling like a dead animal and actually help your equipment to last longer. Welcome back to another episode of the Beer Leaguer Podcast. This episode joined once again by Mason.
Howdy.
And this show, we're going to talk about something that I think is near and dear to everybody in one way or the other. Washing your gear, because you shouldn't stink. We're getting to the point of the season where I think most cities' fall/winter leagues are wrapping up. So, probably planning what you're doing for summer if you play summer hockey, or if you don't do anything over the summer for hockey, or maybe you just play pickup or something like that, or maybe you play outdoors. And that means that your gear is probably not getting the use that it normally does. Probably getting, left behind in a garage or your basement or wherever you put your gear for a couple extra weeks more than normal. And that is the perfect time to wash your gear. So before we get into, I think, some of the stuff of how we wash our gear and stuff, I wanted to point out a couple of reasons why you should wash your gear. And Mason, feel free to chime in if you have other ones or any thoughts on these.
Okay.
One, it actually does. If you wash your gear properly, it helps your stuff last longer. So all your gear, it'll help last longer if you give it proper cleaning and maintenance. Two, nobody likes the stinky guy. I know there's the thing of, it's one of these dumb hockey, bro kind of rules of, I don't want to wash the goals out of my stuff or something like that. No, nobody likes the guy that smells. Just don't.
Plus one to that.
We've all been around that person in the locker room who obviously is, oh yeah, I've left my stuff in the trunk of my car, since our last game a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
And it reeks. Nobody likes that.
Open their bag and it's like, oh, no, that guy's here.
Yeah. That's no one likes that guy. I don't care what you think. Nobody likes that guy. And finally, it's a safety thing. I know a alarming amount of people that have gotten staph infections from their gear. And staph infections is kind of the worst part, but I know people that also get weird rashes and just issues like that because their gear is not clean, and especially if you're not wearing anything underneath some of your gear, which a lot of people don't, then yeah, if you don't keep your gear clean, just think about that. It's kind of like if you went and had certain clothes you wear to go work out in, and then you work out in them every day
Oh my God.
or whatever, and you just keep putting them on. Let me just go put on my workout underpants today. And go for another run.
I feel that analogy, and it's just
it's because they're going to be. I mean, think about it. That's what your protective gear. I'm not even talking about a base layer. Your protective gear. That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
So think about, you go for a workout. You're nice and sweaty. You go peel off all your clothes that are drenched, and a couple days later you go put them back on. I mean, they're going to be dry, but they're going to be crusty and gross.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole talk about this, but some people just leave that shit in their bag and it's still wet when you put it on.
That's what I mean. That's it's disgusting. If you think about it, you like you said, you can feel that. When I say that, you can tell what that feels like, and that's gross. But that's what you're doing with your pads, even if you don't wash them.
Yeah. Well, even to add on to it, if you leave it in the garage forever, or you leave it, in a shed, you don't know what's on your gear. You could have rodents, bugs, anything carrying some fucking disease could just be all over your gear and you'll never even know.
I had someone I used to play with. He would leave his gear in his garage. We played summer hockey, so he'd leave his gear in the garage over the winter. He had cats. The start of every season, he'd be having to clean off cat pee.
Ugh.
I don't know if you know cat pee, it doesn't really ever come out. So you think it's cleaned out, and then he'd get out and we'd be playing in like, in the sun, and he'd be sweating and everything, and it would just start diffusing that lovely ammonia smell.
Oh my god.
That was great. It was yeah, it was disgusting. That was kind of my first walk into people that don't really take care of their gear like that. Because it's like I said, it's not just you don't want to smell thing. It's a health thing. And it does also help your gear with stuff. So I don't know if makes you want to talk about what you do for your gear, because I know you're pretty good about it.
Yeah, I mean, so my ongoing maintenance, which has gotten easier since I got a laundry bag. So I definitely I would suggest the bare minimum maintenance you do is at least take your jerseys and undergarments out of your bag. That's the way to shit usually. Give your other stuff a chance to breathe. But I always take my gear out either that night or the next morning, and spread it out. Just give it some room to breathe, and really dry out really well. Some people, I used to use an alcohol spray and just try to spray, keep the surface fresh. I've gotten away from that in the last few years, but mostly because I'm really stringent about drying it out really well. Whenever possible, I get it in the sun, nice hot sun, dry it out real good, kill some germs. And then 2-3 times a year, I try to do a deep clean. So I do similar to what you do, Roz. I've watched some of your previous videos. When I had a top load dryer, I'd throw some stuff in the dryer and let it fill it up, let it soak for a while. Now I got a front loader, so I heavily use my my bathtub. So I'll fill the bathtub up, put my stuff in there, really slosh it around, try to get the dirt out until I at least do one round of clean water, drain the tub, and then I fill the tub up, usually with kind of warm-ish water. I try not to do anything too hot. And lately I've been using a lot of the it's Lysol, the laundry sanitizer. I'll pour a bunch of that in there and just kind of let it soak. And I'll usually use a little bit of mild, soap detergent or whatever, and just kind of let it soak for a few hours. And then I like to put it out, let it dry in the sun. The latest time, I just cleaned my gear a couple weeks ago. I actually tried putting scent beads in it, like the scent beads you get for your laundry. I don't know if it worked, but yeah, that's what I do to clean my gear.
I didn't notice you smelling linen fresh. I will say.
Well, we've had 3 marathon games. I probably smelled not great after the first one.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty close to what I do. My process hasn't changed a whole lot, and I always like to. I don't think my gear ever smells. I feel like it's always hard to tell if your stuff smells, but I feel like mine, my gloves don't even really smell bad.
Yeah, I don't smell you. I will say one thing that I forgot, that is probably the most important, is I use a boot dryer now. I got a boot dryer for my brother-in-law, and I dry out my skates every day. I dry out my gloves, and I do a couple rounds of that. Because I rusted through rivets on an old pair of skates I had. I just don't want to. I like my skates too much now. I don't want to have to replace the runners or have somebody replace the rivets and stuff. So I try to take really good care of them.
And that's what I mean. That's a good reason of taking care of, cleaning your stuff. Doesn't necessarily mean dunking it in the tub, but just doing a boot dryer that, yeah. So I guess what I do is I try to say I'm going to take my gear out after every game, but it's the next day inevitably because I just get tired and don't want to do it. So the next day I take all my gear out of the bag. I don't always take out my jerseys, honestly, because they're in a separate compartment from everything. And it's literally just my jerseys. It's not my under compression stuff that I wear. So they don't get too bad. I do switch them occasionally, but I don't always take them out. But I do take all my gear out of my bag. I have one of those PVC uh, gear hanger things that I can just throw all my gear on real easily. It's not pretty. It's not great. It's something I made. And, it's one of those things that cost me like $20 to make it and took like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That's where, like, I think I talked about in another, one of my shorts episodes was something called the Uddy. And it's just a bunch of hooks that are on like a bungee cord. And it's made to hang, and they sell it like hockey specific ones, but it's just like hangs your gear on the back of a door. So if you don't have like a big area you can hang it out like that, there's ones that also, it's the same idea. It's like hooks that attach onto your hockey stick, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen that. That's cool.
So anything to get your stuff out and laid out a little bit, just airing it out, I think is like 80% of keeping your gear from being gross.
Yeah, I agree.
So I do that. I air everything out. For my skates, I always, before I put them in my bag, I always wipe down the blade real quick. And then I have the little chamois skate guards, that are when they're in my bag. But then when I get home, I take those off so everything can air out. And I take my insoles out so everything can air out. And then, I have an old, I think from the 90s, Shock Doctor deodorizer dryer that does like ozone and hot air. And I put my gloves and my skates on there. It's basically a really fancy, expensive at the time, not when I bought it because nobody knew what it was, hockey branded boot dryer. So you can find boot dryers for really cheap at places like Costco and Aldi's.
Yeah.
Just saying. If anybody follows the TikTok channel, and I pointed out when they had them at Aldi's not that long ago. So follow the Beer Leaguer on TikTok.
Shameless plug.
Is it shameless? I don't think so. It's me. It's fine. But like that, and that takes care of that stuff. And then I have this enzyme spray that's from hockey stores sell it to spray on my gear. And I don't spray down my gear after every game. I do every other game probably. Or if it's a game where I think I particularly sweated like crazy, like you just said, we've played a couple marathon games. I was like just dripping in sweat. So I did this morning when I put my gear away. I sprayed it because I was like, it's probably gross.
Yeah.
And that's my day-to-day thing. And that's a real quick thing to do. It just, everything's out of the bag. Everything's there. Everything gets to air out. But I do also, I wear an underlayer, which I think makes a big difference. And that gets washed after every game.
Yeah.
There's people that don't, which is disgusting. But that gets washed every game, from that. Then probably, honestly, once a year, I actually do like a deep clean on my gear. And that's just, it's in the tub. It's with a combination of OxyClean and Simple Green. And I put my gloves in there because your gloves come out fine. If you properly dry them and stuff, they'll be fine. I put in gloves, shoulder pads, my pants, and then my shins. And I always take the shin guards apart because I repair shin guards I had the last number of years have multiple pieces. And I nicely soak those and rinse them through, and you can see my whole process. I'll link the video in the description of me doing that. But I rinse all that stuff through until it gets gross and, do all that. And then, I lay it outside in the sun in the summer. That's also a reason now, hey, it's getting to be nice out pretty soon. Yeah. It's a good time to put your gear out. I have also used my pressure washer on that stuff. And that's not a bad way to do it. It does a pretty good job. If you don't want to put it in the tub.
I feel like even a hose would be fine.
Yeah, anything. I know people that take their gear and they dump it into their pools because they have chlorine and everything in there. And instead of putting it in the tub, they just put it in their pool and let the chlorine do its thing.
I feel like that would degrade the foam though.
I mean, it will eventually. That's the thing, is there's a big myth of how quickly this foam degrades. And I mean, if you leave it in the pool overnight, probably.
Yeah.
But if you're putting it in for like an hour or something,
Yeah.
it's not gonna do anything. I think about it. It has to stand up to being on ice. Stuff gets wet. It's not like the foam gets wet and all of a sudden it's gonna, dissolve.
Yeah. Big hockey needs their money though, Roz.
I suppose, but I don't know. I think it's a big myth that people have that you're going to destroy all these things. Like same thing with gloves is people freak out that if you get your gloves wet, that all of a sudden they're just going to like get holes in them and be destroyed. It's like, yeah, don't, make sure you thoroughly dry them.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of thing with clothes. It's not the washing that destroys your clothes. It's the drying. Because you're doing it at high heat. Same thing with any of your hockey stuff.
Yeah.
It's not the washing that's going to be the problem. It's how you dry it. So if you leave it outside, for a day or two in the hot sun, be fine. I have gloves this is how I've treated my gloves for the last almost 30 years. And I have gloves that are still in pretty decent shape that are like 25 years old. So you've seen them. You've seen those gloves.
Yeah, I do have a question about gloves. But before we move on, you mentioned not washing your jerseys after every game. Is that like a superstition for you, or
No?
I know you have it. So I did a few seasons where I didn't wash my jerseys at all, and then that was like my good luck. I did at least take them out of my bag so they dry out, and didn't stink. But now it's like my routine to wash them after every game. I try to let them air dry too, but yeah, just kind of curious.
Yeah, I don't have any superstitions like that.
Yeah,
nothing like. I don't play good enough to have these superstitions. What are you talking about?
I should probably go back to this is a down year for me. I should probably stop washing all my stuff and really amp up on the superstitions I used to have.
I say, is me not washing my jerseys? That's why I don't score goals. Is that the problem?
It depends on your superstition, right? You're not scoring goals. Maybe you should wash your stuff more. Or not.
Yeah, I've never thought my jerseys were that bad. I mean, I wash them a couple times a year. I just don't wash them every game. And they do air out. It is protected though. Like you were saying, if they sat in the same, because all my bags I've used for the last number of years have like a jersey pocket in the lid.
Yeah.
So the jerseys I keep in there, they're separate. So I don't ever think that they're gross when I take them out of the bag. All my other stuff kind of sitting in the bag together just ferments together into gross. But my jerseys kind of miss out on that. So I usually wind up washing my jerseys. Honestly, maybe twice a season.
Huh. Okay.
Not a ton. Like I said, they do air out though. But yeah, I hope they don't. I hope they're not gross.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't noticed it. I'm scarred from Doobie a couple seasons ago, where he it's been more than a couple seasons, but pulled out his fucking jersey and it's covered in black mold. Like that. If you're hanging your stuff up for the season, I would just say take your jersey out of your bag. You don't want to come back to that.
Well, I think that's a huge thing. Is don't leave I think the biggest point of anything that we'll make of this is don't just leave your stuff in the bag.
Yes.
That's the absolute worst thing to do. It's fine if you do it for a day or something or 2 days, but take it out. Don't just leave it in your bag fermenting somewhere. Because, we've seen people with mold on their jerseys. We've seen people with dead rats in their bag. There's been some gross, besides people's stuff just reeking, or also I've seen people that pull out their stuff and it's just between games, in our games once a week, they pull their stuff out and it's dripping because it's just been sitting in the bag and they're like, oh, my gloves are wet. It's well, yeah. What do you expect? They're not going to dry out sitting in your bag. And putting on wet gloves is gross. Putting on wet gloves that have been sitting in just funk for a week, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get how people can be okay with that.
Back to the gloves. So do you have any tricks, or have you like heard of anything to help get rid of like the residue, the tape residue on the palms?
Well, first of all, don't use tape.
Yes,
That does help.
for us mere peasants that have to use tape.
Well, I mean, I use lizard skins and butt ends are the two things I've used last number of years, and they do make a difference. Those do
Yeah,
make a big difference of uh, not wearing out the palms as much, and you don't get the residue on there. Um, as far as for getting off tape residue, uh, I would think, and I don't know, this is just me guessing here, uh, taking something like a laundry soap, something like a Fells Naphtha or something like that, I would think would you'd kind of rub that in and set that in. I would think that would really help loosen it up, but with definitely warm water, so that the glue that's that because that's what it is glue residue. So
right.
that warms up. So I think if you put it in like some warm water, something like a laundry soap like that would do good.
Yeah,
Or like I said, when I wash my gear, I use a combination of OxiClean and the Simple Green, and I think and the OxiClean is it's kind of like bleach, and you have to use that in warm or hot water. Even
yeah.
just that might work for it.
I thought about trying some oil. I recently read like how to get stickers off your wall. Use like olive oil, or maybe not olive oil because that shit's ridiculously expensive, but just like some kind of vegetable oil, right? And that'll help get stickers off your wall. So I thought about doing it on my gloves, like either oil or an oil-based cleaner. I don't know. I haven't done a ton of research into it.
Yeah, it's I mean, well, because you can get it also depends on what your palms or your gloves are made out of. If they're that microfiber stuff, that's going to be you got to be more careful with that because that will soak up something like an oil. I used to back in the day when I had leather palm gloves. I actually would condition the palms with baseball glove conditioner. I did that like every off season. Um,
Fancy.
well, I had baseball glove conditioner. I was like, baseball gloves, leather. The palms are leather. You know,
Yeah.
made sense to me. Um, but now, yeah, a lot of them are like that microfiber or the it's like I think like a wool compound or something that they use, and a lot of those I don't think take to stuff like that as well. Like I would
Okay.
be, and something like an oil, I'd be worried about it staying absorbed
Yeah.
in the palm and possibly going rancid because if
Oh
you don't
boy.
get it out real good,
Yeah.
because they're pretty porous, and also too when you're having tape residue, you have to realize that there's two things that are getting onto your palm of your gloves. There is the glue residue from the tape, which you should be able to get off, but then there's also the coloring from your tape,
Yeah.
which that's a whole nother thing to get off. That's probably not coming off because that's probably a permanent color stain
Yeah.
on there. So if you're trying to get that off, that's going to be way harder to do.
That's one thing I didn't even think about until recently. Like using something like lizard skins or some kind of rubber grip is like how it helps lengthen the life of your gloves, and that's something I
Yeah,
think gets overlooked. Um, yeah, I
that
need to get one of those.
that's a big reason I like those is
Yeah,
because of that, because they don't rip up your gloves. They don't wear the stuff off onto your gloves or anything like that. So it really does help the life of it. I mean, it's as far as their performance otherwise, whatever, to me, it doesn't make a difference. Um,
yeah,
but just for the glove stuff, I like it.
yeah,
Because I get very attached to my gloves and I don't like to get new ones.
yeah,
So,
yeah. That's I would be worried about losing a little bit of a feel for the puck. Not that I'm like fabulous by any means, but yeah, I've thought about trying them out. I recently stopped using like a lot of tape. I have like a tiny like 3 or 4 inch wrap of tape and at the butt of my stick, and like that's about it. I think I've been liking it too, so we'll see.
I honestly, I didn't used to ever tape the end of my stick until about 6 years ago. And then I finally realized it was really hard to pick my stick up on ice. So I needed to have a little butt end just so I can pick it up when I lose it. So that's literally the only reason I have anything on the butt end of my stick.
Makes sense.
So, all right. Another thing I wanted to talk about. So we were talking about kind of like after game stuff. I have a list here it's actually from a Deadspin article, which I thought was weird, of things to use for like kind of, this is the like post game spray your gear down stuff. All right, and I want to get your reaction to these ideas, Mason, and see what you think. If they're good idea, bad idea, if you would use them. So number one, white vinegar.
Sounds legit. I'd do it.
That's totally a good thing. It's because vinegar is great for deodorizing, neutralizing bacteria, all the stuff you need.
It's my favorite cleaner.
It's kind of like the best all-purpose cleaner.
It's supposed to be good instead of Jet Dry for rinse aid. That's what I've heard.
Yes.
I've not tried it.
Oh yeah, I use that for actually when I wash any of my hockey or workout stuff, I throw some vinegar into the rinse cycle.
Yeah.
So a lot of companies now recently this last year have actually made vinegar type replacements that are just that. They're basically just vinegar that you put in. So, but it's good for everything because it clears everything, cleans everything, clean your windows, clean your laundry, clean your floors. So a vinegar mix, excellent. And it's cheap. So, and that's something you can just spray your gear down with and let it evaporate. Vodka. This is another big one.
Yeah, I did this. I think it worked all right.
I've never done it, but I've heard people say it works good. They say the cheaper the vodka you buy, the better.
Yeah, it's closer to rubbing alcohol.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what it is. They have on this list Clorox Green Works Wipes, which I've never used or never heard of even. I mean, I know Clorox wipes. But...
Yeah, gut feel I'd be nervous to use a Clorox product on my gear.
They say on here that it works for everything and works good.
Okay.
I imagine it cleans it, but I can't imagine I would think it'd be really good for hard surfaces.
Yeah, I can imagine a wipe would really get in there.
Yeah. I wouldn't think that'd be the best choice. I would think that'd be good for like cleaning your helmet, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I was going to ask you about that, but we can circle back.
All right. The next one on here is isopropyl alcohol. Rubbing alcohol.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just talked about that kind of being close to vodka. I wouldn't. I don't know if I'd do it because it's expensive, but I feel like it would be all right.
Yeah, I use that like honestly clean all my electronics.
Yeah,
because it evaporates. But they do bring up a good point on here, which is a good thing for this, is that it can dry out leather.
Yeah.
So you do have to be careful with it. So foam and stuff, it should be fine. But for anything that has leather on it, should be careful. Febreze.
Sure. I mean, it might mask your stink for a little bit, but it's not good for cleaning, I would say.
Yeah, it's not going to do squat. It's all you're going to honestly get from Febreze is, I think it smells nice right when you put it on. Then as soon as you start doing anything again, you're going to get that gross Febreze and whatever stink you originally had mix.
Yeah.
Also, too, if you get Febreze that smells, it could irritate your skin really bad because you're just basically spraying Febreze on your skin, which is not good.
Yeah.
And the last one they have on here is Lysol.
I feel like it would work. Gets back to that irritant, like pretty close to yours. Any very like strong chemical, I would be hesitant to use.
Yeah, I'd be a lot more worried about like a Febreze or a Lysol breaking down the foam on your pads than putting them in a tub of an easy cleaner. And I'll just say for that, I use the Simple Green that I keep saying I use because I kept seeing people talk about it, because it does foam up really nice. And that's a big thing when you're cleaning your stuff. If it foams really nice, it's probably going to get everything out and you only need a real little bit of it.
Yeah.
And it's less likely to do any damage. So
yeah. I do realize I'm saying this and I soak my stuff in a Lysol product. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
well, I think there's a difference between soaking it in something too versus spraying on their stuff.
Right.
So from this list, I would say, and I think you would agree with this, that vinegar is probably the best one overall.
Yeah, I use vinegar on everything. I put that shit on everything.
And then you can spray your gear with it and then put it on your French fries.
There you go. Yeah.
Then after that, I would say the only other ones I would say are worth using is the rubbing alcohol and the vodka.
Yeah.
So, but I think vinegar is probably the best, like best bang for your buck kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have like a gallon of it on hand just for anything.
I
It's a
assume
Swiss Army knife of cleaners.
Yeah, like I say, I assume most people have it around the house for it, but you can put, what is it? I believe it's a 3-to-1 ratio of water to vinegar in a spray bottle, and that's kind of the recommended thing for spraying down your hockey gear. One thing though with vinegar versus rubbing alcohol is the rubbing alcohol, you can spray it down, you can saturate your gear, it'll dry fast, because that's why, like I said, I use it on electronics and stuff. Like that's how I clean my phone, because it dries super fast, evaporates right away. Whereas anything else you put on with it is not going to dry nearly as fast, and you are going to the vinegar. You kind of need to saturate stuff with it. It'll dry pretty quickly, but it's not going to dry, within an hour or two. It's like an overnight or a day so of drying.
Do you have a recommended alcohol percentage? I think obviously for electronics it's like 100%, but I wonder if like hockey gear, if like 80% would be better because it sits maybe a little longer.
Yeah, I mean that's what I just use whatever they have at the local. I don't know what you'd call the store, the local 5 and dime.
The corner store.
The corner store. I mean, honestly,
Radio Shack.
Yes, at Radio Shack. It's honestly like Dollar Tree has super cheap. Like it's whatever they have there. It's
okay.
Yeah, like 75% or 80% or something like that.
Yeah.
The biggest thing, it doesn't need to stay on there very long to kill bacteria, especially if you do it regularly. That's kind of the whole point of using rubbing alcohol and stuff is regularly use it. It dissipates quickly, but because you regularly use it, it's only on there a little bit. It'll eventually kill most of the bacteria you have.
Yeah.
So. Okay, you had a helmet question?
Yeah. What kind of? So I use a bubble, so I could talk about how I clean that. But like, how do you maintain your helmet in general? Like, aside from face protection, do you do anything?
Not a ton. I do occasionally kind of wipe the outside down with something. That is when I would use like a cleaning wipe or something like that.
Yeah.
What I usually do is I just have like a microfiber or something that if I'm like spraying my gear down with the cleaner, I'll spray like the plastic hard part of my helmet real quick and just give it a quick wipe. And there's nothing on it, but it just kind of gets off if there's any gunk has gotten to it. And then with that like damp microfiber, I will just kind of wipe the inside padding of it, of my helmet, because it depends on what kind of padding you have in your helmet to, I think, how to clean it, because there is the super old school, I think it's almost always white in color, really squishy padding that I don't think is in really any helmets anymore. That stuff would absorb and not release any liquids. So that was like, you had to be real careful with it. Then there's the more like hard foam that is in a lot of helmets now. That's actually pretty good because that stuff usually doesn't absorb anything. That's what's in my helmet. So even if I sat there and just sprayed it with something, it's not absorbing. So that's why I just kind of give it a good wipe on the foam parts. But then there is I guess there's more than that, because there's the newer stuff like the D3O, and that's a little bit more absorbent. So you have to be a little bit more careful with how you clean it. Like for the stuff inside your helmet, I don't know if I'd spray anything directly on the foam.
Yeah.
Because I'd be more worried about that foam breaking down than anything else.
Yeah.
I'd probably be putting that on something and wiping it in there. But then also there's the new 3D printed helmets, which they're plastic. Like I don't think you have to, I think just a quick wipe occasionally would probably be all you have to do. For those things. I've never had an issue with my helmet being really gross. I also wear a really cool skull cap always, so
Yeah.
that I think helps. Um, I would think honestly more so if you have if you're somebody that wears a bunch of hair product, your helmets probably get gross from that.
I kind of fall into that category. I don't wear stuff since working from home. I don't wear stuff in my hair as often, but yeah, I wouldn't say. I mostly ask out of curiosity because I do like nothing to my helmet, and it's not. I would agree, it's not gross. I think I have like the white foam that you're talking about. Um, I used to have like the nice Easton E700. This is like a 10-year-old helmet now, but would have been a 10-year-old helmet now. But I love being able to take the padding out of it, and I could like wash it. I used to do that a lot. Um, but yeah, now I don't do anything. I do clean my visor with, like you said, like a microfiber. I wipe it down with some water, and then I reapply some baby shampoo before games. Um, yeah, I would be nervous to like use anything in my helmet in fear of like because when I sweat, like I you can get the bunch of shit in your eyes. Like if you have
Yeah,
chemicals floating around in your helmet, I'd be worried about that. Yeah, I was also curious.
yeah. That's why I think whenever we say washing your gear, not helmets, not skates. Those are separate categories of stuff. I think everything else you can wash kind of the same.
Yeah,
You know, but yeah, I think it's all the only way you can really do that with helmets is just kind of wipe it off on the inside. Wipe it with something on it. That might be a good spot for one of these Clorox wipes or whatever they were talking about
yeah,
in this article. That maybe, but I would just think that's all you have to do. I don't know anybody that's helmets are that bad usually.
yeah.
And honestly, if you sweat, I will say this too: is if you're someone that sweats a whole bunch from your head, is get some kind of a little skull cap thing. I wear one because of that because I sweat like crazy. Um, I have a nice one that like has a little channel to channel the sweat away from me because I hate getting sweat in my eyes. Or they make sweat bands that you put inside of the helmet. They kind of they're like stickers that you change every game, every 2 games, whatever. Those also, I know people that use those that they like them a lot, and that helps. I think that makes a huge difference for your helmet if you are someone that sweats a lot. Otherwise, your sweat will break down that foam pretty bad. And helmet's one of the few things I care about making sure are in decent shape. Other foam stuff, whatever,
Yeah.
But the helmet I care about. And I don't. Okay, like I said, with helmets and skates, same thing. There's not much you can really do with cleaning skates. You can kind of wipe the outsides down, and that's about it. I do occasionally spray that like enzyme cleaner that I use on my stuff. I do occasionally spray that in the skates every so
Yeah.
often, not regularly. I do also spray it when I get people's skates to sharpen. Everybody skates that I sharpen from my sharpening service. You get a run on the deodorizer / heater, and I do spray it with the enzyme cleaner. So
Nice. I'm missing out on that with just the blades now.
yeah, seriously, that's why you should do the whole skate, get the full service. So does that kind of cover it for cleaning gear?
I think so. Unless we want to talk about cleaning your stick, but I don't have a good reason to do that.
I don't know that I've ever cleaned a stick.
Maybe you should. You're giving your stick a little lick down the other day.
That's a good way to clean it. Yeah, apparently I just break sticks now, so
Yeah.
I can just keep getting new ones. So yeah, I think that kind of covers all the stuff for cleaning things. I will say again, we said in the beginning, I'll reiterate it. I think the 2 biggest things you can do, I'll say 2 for keeping your gear not being disgusting. 1, air it out. It doesn't have to be a nice stand. It doesn't have to be anything good. Just putting it on the floor and airing it out overnight. That's fine. Or in your garage overnight or something, but air it out. And the other thing I know we talked about, but we kind of glossed over it a couple times, is wearing stuff under your gear.
Yeah.
I think that makes a huge difference of wearing some kind of under compression garments or whatever, even an old t-shirt, people do that. Anything like that, because that's just going to soak up all the sweat and stuff before it gets to your gear generally. And I think that helps your gear from being gross. Especially with skates. There's people that do it barefoot, and I just can't imagine that. That just seems so disgusting to me. Put some kind of socks on, and that'll help. It helps your skates. If you hate the feeling of socks, you can get super thin ones. They make super thin socks that don't feel like you're wearing socks for that purpose, for people that like to be barefoot. But it helps. It helps your skates from getting as gross as they would if you were barefoot. So I think just those two things. We do nothing else. Those two things help. Any of this other stuff is added bonus. Help your gear last longer. Help you not be the stinky person in the locker room.
Yeah.
Because trust me, everybody talks about you. If you're the smelly one in the locker room, everyone talks about you. I mean, look, me and Mason are talking about like gross locker room people stuff from 3, 4, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
It stays with you. So no one likes that. So I think that's it. Any other stuff to add, Mason?
I got nothing.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. As always, appreciate any sort of likes, subscribes, reviews. Help the podcast out. All right, everyone. Catch you in the next one.
See ya.